This solo sounds like someone decided they were going to win a fight before it had even started. And that was the entire point. Steve Stevens was just 23 years old when he recorded it, and he had a very specific goal: to make it sound like a weapon. Hey, it's Owen here. Billy Idol, Rebel Yell, 1983. This is Solos That Rule. And with Billy Idol finally getting the nod for the Hall of Fame this year, I figured it was a great time to have a look at the guitar solo, which redefined what a weaponized guitar sounds like. Before I get into looking at the licks, there's a reason why everyone is talking about this song again. Billy Idol is finally heading to the Hall of Fame this year, and the new documentary, Billy Idol Should Be Dead, just confirms what we already knew. He and Steve Stevens were on a mission to redefine rock sound design. Steve Stevens had a specific non-guitar related goal for this song. Keep that in the back of your mind as I break the solo down, because once you hear what he was aiming for, the whole thing really clicks. Let's have a look at the first lick. Is this the most played lick in rock and roll history? Quite possibly, but there's a good reason for it. It works. Opening with this phrase really sets the scene for what Steve Stevens was going for. Absolute rock and roll confidence. Of course, many of you might know that as the Chuck Berry lick, of course used in so many of his songs and repeated by pretty much every rock and roll guitarist from Angus Young, Steve Stevens, and so on. And just to make life a little bit more interesting, he doesn't play it the same every single time. There's two variations. The first time, bend, and 2 double stops. Second time, it's a bend and 1 double stop. And then bend, 2 double stops twice. The next moment I want to point out is about 5 or 6 bars into the solo. This one is interesting because it sounds really simple. Steve plays this repeating lick 3 times with a really epic bend at the end of each phrase. This lick is a little bit tricky to get your fingers around the first couple of times you play it. Let me know how you got on, or if it's just me that struggled with it. Alright, the RayGun. Steve Stevens said that he wanted this solo to sound like, and I'm not making this up, a space-age gunfight. That was the actual brief he gave himself. He said, it can't just be notes. We need something that's got a sonic blast. Stevens has talked about Tommy Bolin being a huge influence on the solo, particularly a track called Quadrant 4. And once you know that, you can really hear it. Bolin's use of an echoplex delay effect was a massive influence on the sound that Steve Stevens was trying to get on this Rebel Yell solo. In the studio, Stevens used a Lexicon PCM41 delay to get that sound. But here's where it gets better. When it came to playing live, Stevens worked out that holding a toy RayGun close to the pickups could recreate that exact same sound. So that became the live version. Now obviously this is not the kind of RayGun Steve Stevens uses. In fact, he sells the vintage modified ones on his own website. So it's not just a gimmick, it's a completely legitimate part of his signal chain, just not one that you would normally expect. The point is, that sound wasn't an accident, and it wasn't just effects. It was Stevens thinking about sonic concepts first, and then finding the weirdest way to recreate them.
What do the people need to do?
The next lick is a great example of how you can reuse a phrase to create something bigger than the sum of its parts. That's just one lick repeated 3 times in 3 different octaves. If you've ever had a guitar lesson, you've probably been told to do this a lot. And you thought, what is the point? This lick is the point. And then up an octave. Up another octave. So the first and second lick played exactly the same, just in different octaves. Then that third one, slightly different at the end with that 1.5 step bend. Hey, if you're enjoying these Solos That Rule episodes, don't forget to hit subscribe. Rebel Yell was always one of my favourite songs to play in my cover band days, because once you hit that opening riff, the people would come a-running, which is always a lot more fun than playing to an empty room. By the way, if you want to learn that intro, stick around to the end of the video for a little bit of a bonus lesson, and I'll show you how to play it. Not being one to ever learn solos, whenever I'd play this song, I'd just go into some B minor shred fest, and occasionally I'd put the guitar behind my head and do that sort of thing, because it's just that kind of song with that kind of attitude. What gear was used on the original recording of the Rebel Yell solo? Steve Stevens picked up a Kramer Pacer, which was early 80s, maybe 82, 83, with a Floyd Rose tremolo, which came in very handy for some of those effects that he was doing. That guitar was used for about 90% of the Rebel Yell album, so there's a very good chance that it was used on that solo. The amp was a 1972 Marshall 100 watt Super Lead. Effects-wise, Steve was often known to use a Boss GE7 EQ pedal and a Proco Rat to get a little bit of extra oomph out of the plexi. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, that Lexicon PCM41 delay to get the RayGun sound in the studio. The reason the gear matters is that these guitar tones were not by accident. Every weird element in that solo was a specific decision to make something amazing. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. As a little bonus lesson, I'll show you how to play that iconic opening riff. There's quite a lot going on here, and for this one, it's optional whether you use the pick or not. I like to play this with just my fingers. So what you're doing here is you're playing two parts. You're playing a bass part and a rhythm guitar, almost a keyboard part. So first thing to do is to get that bass note under your fingers. And then add that repeating rhythm part over the top. So to do that, we're going to bar the 10th fret on the first and second strings with our little finger. Pluck them with our first and second fingers of our picking hand. And then the fun begins. Try playing both at the same time. Have fun with it. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode of Solos That Rule. On the way out, hit the subscribe button, and if you want some more Solos That Rule, the playlist is right there. See you in the next one.